whenever I'm on social media, TikTok used to balkanize as an instrument for balkanizing communities. I see whenever those do something, whenever there's a wedding, whenever somebody has built a massive mansion, there are always commentaries. One stray comment has to come in there. As a community, we are doing better than you. Whenever people go for holidays during festive seasons, they're like during festives, they're like, oh, we see we just drive all the way from town, we go down to our homes, then we come back after 1 week. So we own cars, we are doing better than you. But my intent analysis, as someone who has got an experience to go travel different parts of this country, I get more of the feeling that Kenya is just a land of two tribes, the poor and the rich. I know you've been to the deeper parts of Meru that I've never been to. I've just seen maybe the towns and a little of the villages when I go hiking around some places, maybe around Jandarua and Muranga and maybe Nyeri. I would like you to give a reflection of what's your subtle opinion about going to how do people live? Do they reflect a much deviation from the standards of living you've seen at your place in terms of access to how people live? Like if you walk into somebody's house, you see there's a coach, there's a radio, and as that is what the national statistics, how is it called? Kenya
National Bureau of Statistics.
Those are the aspects they use to measure poverty. Do you know that?
No, they look at a couch, TV.
Yeah, they look at how you live. Do you have
when they do the census.
When they do the census.
So they also note what you have.
They note what you have.
They
ask you, do you have a television?
No,
for the coach, they make their own observation and write down.
Yes. And then is the next one, 2029, I think.
The
last one was done in 2019.
I don't remember when the last one was done. 2019. Okay, wait for the next.
The next is 2029.
I tend to think we are over exaggerating things, and we are taking a known goal as communities that live in Kenya. We tend to say we're doing better as a community than the other, but the question is, are we really doing better as a community than the other? Maybe give your aspect on what you saw in this town, in the deeper parts of Mount Kenya. What is how the towns in that particular area look like versus what is reflected, how people decide their towns and say, our town is not poor.
Whoever is just stamping that town is not poor, I think it still goes down to individual wealth that becomes collective. Because you've had this narrative of Kikuyus who own the real money. The physical replication of that money is not seen. Are you aware? But then for a Luo guy, on the other hand, he will have a few shillings. But the kind of, because if you walk in a home in Kisumu today of a millionaire, and you walk of a billionaire, and you walk in the home of a Kikuyu in Nyeri of a billionaire, you will find that there are two distinct homes. This Kikuyu guy has not really equipped the house with all those fancy stuff, but that little guy has really equipped the house with all those fancy stuff.
So and this all boils down now to like how we live. For example, naturally, I find myself loving quality. That I'm not too
over quantity.
I don't make a lot of noise on what I can purchase and how I desire to live. But I find myself, it's how I think it boils down to exposure. What did you see while growing up? I think it boils down to that.
So it goes to, so how is that related to what reflects to the kind of wealth you will have in your specific community of exposure? Because I do want to believe that you see many times when they say that the rich, if you're talking about the rich in Kenya, you can't miss to put Kikuyus there.
Yes,
right? And I think when we draw back from history, and as I said, close proximity to Nairobi, where everything was happening, a lot of activities were being witnessed in form of exposure, in form of all the colonialists were doing stuff, the capital injected into running things around. We talk about every big economic activity that was happening. It was happening within this area, the Nairobi metropolitan that captures Machakos counties, Kiambu counties, and so on and so forth. And on the other side, those communities that were far from the colonialist interest, they never got exposed to certain things. But then there were specific individuals who moved away from these communities and came, and they took that element back there. But still, it has to create the distinction of the rich and the poor. But still, as you say, quality. You might have, your financial power and another person. You can live in the simplest place possible. Another person that way, like 5,000 simple billionaires, right? But then how are we going to measure your extent of reach? You see, for us Kenyans, our extent of reach, this is a reach community and this is not a rich community right now is based on the physical
assessment.
Because if we are talking about rich, if right now you are released to go and do your research, who is rich, you will come back with shocking results.
Exactly.
You understand? You will go there and say that I have seen he has 7 vehicles in the garage. Rich. I've seen they have this rich. But then
vast land.
Exactly. But then we tend to really because I still do believe that the rich in Kenya are really silent. We don't know.
There's the massive rich is so silent. Then we have the middle class.
The rural guys who are doing on social
media. The ones who push it on social media for everybody.
And it gives, by the way, apparently it gives Kenyans the perception that these are the rich guys.
But another aspect I look at our perception of rich based on physical assessment. It defines our poverty levels. For example, in the US, when you interact with their content, that is news and you read and what you watch, you realize in America, people live like you could be living with an company billionaire in the same neighborhood. You can afford, both of you, but now you can't rate him because you don't know how his virtual assets.
Yeah, you don't know him much.
His virtual assets held. In Kenya, I think what people have is what you can see. That tells you we are poor. You could quick assess and see with your own eyes. This guy is doing well. This guy is doing well.
True. Because say, for instance, in the US, of course, there's that global reach that we all know. Somebody like Elon Musk is rich because is affiliated with companies that are having a global impact, not just a nationwide impact, in a global impact, right? I think the rich aspect, if you want to analyze, to get away from that poor mentality, if you want to know a rich person, if we move away from the physical attribution, that if I walk, like for instance, you've seen those on compounds in Sukari, you find somebody is living in a certain kind of a home with some good fence, good gate, then automatically we conclude that this is a rich person. Right? But then I think we should have the mentality of, okay, what does this guy own? That is nationally known. Cash flow. Yeah, that is nationally known. You see, like if you're pointed to Elon Musk, there's SpaceX, there's Starlink, and then the Boring Company, and so on and so forth. But then when you come back here, we just tend to, you can meet SK Mashara in town if you don't know him and say, this person. But then whoever knows him knows what he owns, and you automatically say this is a rich person. You understand? Yeah. So that's why I say the rich is very, very silent, and our analysis of rich is still way beyond how we can really conclude that these are the rich and these are the poor, and poverty we just have to associate with the lack of. We don't have.
Okay, on that aspect of how people say that we are rich, I think people tend to look at what you own more than their potential to bring cash flows, which in the world of finance is a very poor analysis of how people should be classified as being rich. For example, you'll find dollar billionaires in the US, living in neighborhoods owned by people who just bought the home. They can't be classified anywhere. Maybe they're dollar millionaires, but they live with the dollar billionaire, especially those ones who don't want to become exclusive at the beginning. So, for example, you realize at a certain moment of being rich, you live the same standards, except the only thing that defines you is how much more in terms of wealth rating or property rating. But your consumption is the same. Your car is the same. The type of security you can afford is the same. So on that particular aspect, if you look at our towns in Kenya, you hear people talk about their towns. People say, our county is doing way more. In terms of community, they personalize it to community. Our community is doing way better than yours, because if you go to our county, people are not poor. Like you people don't even have houses. Is it really true that some communities are doing better than the others?
Of course, evidently. Physically, yes, they are doing better than others. But I think the physical outlook of a community is doing better than others I think it still goes down to some certain amenities or what
access to amenities.
Access to
individualized amenities.
Exactly, because the only way you'd know a community is doing well or your town is doing well is because certain basic things, if you want them, you get them. You understand?
And then it still connects to the aspect of exposure.
Exactly.
For instance, I came across an article talking about how the West is quick to classify Africa as poor, while our version of wealth is different from
their version.
For example, somebody who wants 100 cows and prefers to stay in a hut is considered poor.
So they measure it based on, is it based on amenities or based on owning certain type of things?
I think it's based on the perception of the Western.
So do they do a value equivalence? Because 100 cows, you know the price of 100 cows is a lot of money.
And you'll casually find these people working with 100,000, but they don't have
They don't even have a bank account.
Especially when you go to people like the Maasais, the northern communities around Isiolo, Samburu, you could easily find these people living like that.
Because have you watched TikTok videos of some random guy asking somebody in another country which is the poorest country? They say Africa. They even don't know Africa. Africa is a continent with 54 really great countries. So I do think the perception of outsiders on the poverty of Africa, I just believe is number one on maybe how we do things and also on our infrastructure. I do believe so. If we don't have much skyscrapers, much luxury cars on the road, and certain really many good schools, we are considered poor generally. Because the same example that you've given, I might live in that hut, but I own 700 cattle, 1,000 acres of land, and 10 of those across, and I'm rich. Personally, I know I'm rich. But I think the analysis of the outsiders is based on what they see. They have never done their community census like the KBNS. They ask me that, what do you have? And I tell them I have 100 cows, and the equivalence of that is like 20 million Kenya shilling. It's around $200,000.
So I think of the perception of the reflective perception of somebody classifying, when they're talking of you people being poor, I think they have put themselves in the setting where they live, and forget that this is your own situation. This is not mine. For example, in the West, say these people are poor, like they missed a meal. It's because we don't eat 6 meals in a day. Like they have a 4-course meal.
But who does this analysis?
It's the World Bank perception of economy. Economics.
So 1 meal a day is considered poor.
Yeah, 1 meal a day.
How do they know whether you're fasting or not?
But when it comes to people who tell you how to manage your weight and take care of your health, they get to have 1 meal a day.
So they only know that. Okay, how about our richness in terms of our natural resources? Do they consider that, or they do feel that we have them, but we don't know?
Their greatest assessment is on the potential cash flow. For example, even me, I believe today, you can't tell me you own land, acres and acres, not fenced. There's no value happening on that land. You are not farming. You have not fenced.
It's just there.